What's up guys, Starlink here, and on this episode of Reviews to the Past, I figured I'd delve right into Metroid 2 next, considering the first episode was about the first Metroid game. I might as well keep that pace going, right? Because there's still quite a few entries in the series to cover. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it and discover why I still enjoy playing this game to this day. So this is where it all started for me as a child. Plugging that cartridge into my Game Boy, trying to find a light source somewhere to sit under so I could actually see the screen and start delving into this universe known as Metroid. You play as Samus, of whom is tasked by the Federation with exterminating the Metroids on their homeworld of SR388. An overwhelming responsibility for sure, but this is all in a day's work for a bounty hunter who is well known for accomplishing the impossible. Where some would dismiss Metroid 2 as an inferior successor to its predecessor on the NES, for me, it was always the opposite. I love this game's world from beginning to end, plunging into the depths of SR388, hunting down those space horrors known as Metroids. The isolating atmosphere that the series is known for is in great effect here. Wandering around the deep, dark caverns of the planet, not knowing what Metroid was lurking around the corner just lying in wait for you, was nerve-wracking as a child, and I loved every moment of it. The controls are a step up from the first game here. One of the things that always bugged me about playing the original Metroid was the lack of the ability to fire downward. Not so with this one though, thankfully, as you start utilizing this ability from the very beginning. Samus feels a little more maneuverable when she's in the air, and less slippery when she hits the ground this time as well. She still spasms around like crazy when she's hit by an enemy, but when her feet actually touch the ground after a jump, she's solid as a rock and less likely to fly off a ledge, which is great. You still go around collecting plenty of missile packs and energy tanks, along with plenty of upgrades to your power suit along the way, and I still dig that little animation that plays when you first obtain the Varia suit. I always loved to pause the game in Samus's mid-turnaround just to get a better look at it. Simply badass. Oh, come on, you know you did it too. Samus also has a few new abilities up her power suit this time, which helps make exploration of the game much more manageable. The introduction of the Spider Ball in particular is a welcome feature here. I only wish that there were more 2D Metroid games that actually had it. Sure, it was in the Prime Trilogy too, but those were 3D environments and you were limited to specific tracks that you could cling to, so it wasn't quite the same. One of the best abilities that would make its debut here though is the space jump. No longer did you have to worry about climbing up some long vertical shaft only to make a single mistake and fall to your doom just to start all over again like you had to do in the first game. Nope, you can just jump in the air continuously now until you reach your destination, which is awesome. It's not perfect of course as you obtain it further into the game, and it takes a bit of time to narrow down the timing of your jumps just to keep it going. You can't just continuously press jump and call it a day after all. It's still a great ability though, and unlike the Spider Ball, it would continue to be featured in future 2D entries in the series. Combine this bad boy with the screw attack, and you're pretty much an invincible spinning ball of destruction, unless you hit some spikes. Just to give you an example of how great both the Spider Ball and the space jump truly are here, the first time I played through Metroid 2, I completely missed out on the high jump boots and only realized this after I discovered them on my second playthrough. So I ended up finishing the entire game without the high jump boots, but thanks to the Spider Ball and the space jump, I didn't really need them. Still would have come in handy though. Discoveries like this had so much more of an impact before the internet came to be, I swear. You just don't get that same satisfaction as you do when you first discover something for yourself. It's a good feeling. But I digress. Metroid 2 felt like a good step forward compared to the first entry. The only real problem I have with it is just like the first Metroid, there is no in-game map to help guide you. This is always hit or miss for some people, as you could argue that getting lost is part of the game's charm. For me personally, however, Even though I know this game inside and out after playing it dozens of times, I definitely would have loved to have an in-game map present the first time around. It just makes things more manageable. Another complaint would be is that there are not many boss fights found in this game, outside of the Metroids themselves anyway. In fact, there really is only one mini-boss fight with a creature that guards the spring ball, and he's a pushover. Thankfully though, hunting for the Metroids scattered across the planet more than makes up for this and is arguably the game's greatest strength. Now you'll come across various evolutions of these Metroids being the Alpha, Gamma, Zeta, and Omega forms. It's not so much the fights with the Metroids themselves that's great, but it's the lead up to them that's the best part for me anyways. Seeing an empty shell lying around usually means there's a Metroid of some form lurking nearby, so you naturally start exploring. Then when you finally find it sitting in a corner of a room somewhere, only to have it jolt towards you when you get close, or even have it evolve before your very eyes. It may not look like much now, sure, but back in the day with the Game Boy hardware, it was a great way to build up suspense. I know I was worried out of my mind and always had my missiles at the ready when I played this game late at night under a lamp as a kid. Seriously, this is how I used to play games back in the day. And honestly, I don't know how in the hell I ever tolerated it. Moving on to the art design, Metroid 2 is much improved over the first game, particularly with Samus herself. She's a lot bigger and more detailed this time around. Plus, right from the start, you can clearly see her ship in all its glory, which is a nice touch. The Metroids look bigger and more menacing than Kraid and Ridley did on the NES, same goes for the final boss, which is a much more epic fight than the Mother Brain ever was, terrifying to look at too. Rooms and corridors feel a little more varied this time around, but you'll still come across some duplicate areas here and there. The only downside to Metroid 2 versus the first game I feel is that it lacks any color being on the Game Boy, but you can't really fault it much there, since that's how it was designed after all. I feel this game has more to do with sound effects to build its atmosphere this time around, but there are still a few great music tracks present here. The main track you'll hear from the very start of the game is very adventurous in tone and has you ready to go hunt some Metroids, while the track you hear near the end of the game when you're inching that much closer to the final boss sounds very dark and sinister. The standout track for me, however, has to be the ending credits theme with Samus running in the background. It still sounds so epic to this very day. The sound effects are where it's at though, and like I mentioned before, this is where the game truly shines in bringing out that atmosphere and isolation that the series is known for. There are times when you'll hear nothing but the pitter-patter of Samus's footsteps down a long corridor, for example. Now I always found these sections rather odd as a kid, wondering why there was no music playing in the background other than something akin to chirps and beeps, but then it hit me. Would you really focus on little noises like Samus's footsteps if music was playing in the background? I certainly wouldn't. It gives you reason to worry and be on your toes, ready for a Metroid lurking around nearby jumping out to attack you. Even the lead up to the final boss changes its tone the closer you get, to the point that when you hit the final room, you hear warning signals firing off as a giant creature growls and snarls below you. Examples like this are why I loved this game when I was younger, and I still enjoy it to this day. It really immersed you that much more into the game. In the end though, if I'm going to slap a number on this thing, I'd give Metroid 2 Return of Samus on the Game Boy 7.5 baby Metroids out of 10. There are far better ways to experience this game now than there was in the past, be it the fan-made remake of AM2R on the PC or Nintendo's official remake of Samus Returns on 3DS. They are both great in their own right and worthy of a playthrough to experience this game in a more modern light. My nostalgia for Metroid 2 on the Game Boy will still live on though, and like I said with the first game, I still think it's worth at least one playthrough if you're a fan of the Metroid universe and would like to explore the roots of the original game. There are just better options available now is all. I still think that this game has the best looking version of Samus outside of her suit though. Just my 2 cents. So if you couldn't already tell after watching this review, I have a soft spot for this game. Now that's probably because it's the first entry in the Metroid universe that I ever played. Now that's not to say it's my favorite entry in the series, nor is it the best way to play the game nowadays, but I still had a great time playing through it for the sake of this review. Hell, I even went out of my way last year to pick up a reproduction copy for the Game Boy Advance titled Metroid 2 DX, which, just like Link's Awakening DX, adds a bunch of color to the game. And despite some audio hiccups here and there and some stutterings when you're transitioning between rooms, it's still a cool way to experience the game. Also, the cartridge looks pretty damn snazzy, not gonna lie. But anyways, that's enough about me blabbing on about my personal experiences of the game. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, or dislike if you didn't. And as always, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Reach for the stars.